Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing view of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts to get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We are back and live yet again here on a Thursday. Terrific Thursday we've got planned for you here today. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show. Wherever and however you may be watching and listening, thanks for making us a part of your day. We're live on all platforms: iHeartRadio, YouTube, X, Twitch, TikTok, and IG is where you can like, follow, subscribe, keep you up to date. Hit the bell button. Get notified on future and past shows. Bottom half of the hour, Cool McCain drops on by. We'll be talking a lot about Philadelphia and those Eagles. And so far in March Madness, it's fun. I'll get into that as well. 8 for 8 so far. I'm undefeated. I have yet to suffer a loss. I'll have to check exactly what the bracket looks like here later on, but I did have my bracketeer yesterday. So if you missed it, look up on all of my social medias as well, and keeping you up to date as well with during March Madness. So the only thing that I will say about this, what is not so much madness, what it is it's kind of a disappointment. So this year's March Madness, now I get excited about this every year because it's literally this day that starts up on my birthday on March 19th. That's when the tournament begins. But this year, unlike all the years I've watched March Madness, this year for the men's side of things looks really dull. Now, I'm not saying this in any disrespect, but I think if you really got a closer look at what college basketball has been now for the last few years, there's not a whole lot of wow. Not a whole lot of players that give me the wow. Not like when Zion was in Duke. He gave me the wow. I mean, Kansas for years. They've been the program, outstanding, terrific, and they always gave me the wow. The coaching was great. North Carolina, Tyler Hansborough, several other really, really good college players that came out of the program, they gave me the wow. Anthony Davis in Kentucky gave me the wow. John Wall gave us the wow. I don't see a whole lot of wow at all this year. When I filled out my bracket, I can't begin to tell you the last time that I felt like this kind of seems obvious, filling out the bracket. Now, it may not be to at least the other percentile, which right now there's only about 2.84% with perfect brackets. I'm one of those percentiles. But the thing you got to look at with college basketball is that this year kind of seemed like this was definitely a turnoff and a down year for men's basketball. But I think this stems into what the NBA culture has become. And I voiced about this before previously in the last episode. And I think as we start to shift and as we start to kind of dig deeper and closer into what the league is becoming and what it's potentially going to be 5-10 years from now, it is certainly trending in a different direction, and it's not good. Okay. Watching basketball for years and years since I was a kid. Okay, college basketball was always like the fun start of the NBA. Always was, always will be. Now, I think to certain extents, I mean, it's very clear. College basketball these days than what it was years ago when I started watching it as a kid. I mean, this one and done program and the NIL and so much more that's affecting it. It's not like college football and like the NFL where you're striking deals almost every day of the week. In the NBA, it's different because now the one and done deal in college basketball has been hurting at least the products of the programs. Plus, it's been hurting the products of domestic players. The only best domestic player we have currently in the NBA right now is Jason Tatum. That's it. All over. Look around the league. Just like in hockey and just like in Major League Baseball, it's being taken over by international studs, international stars. I don't have a problem with that. But I think if you really, really, really want to make this like a true American thing, then you got to get with the program. You got to get better at this. This one and done deal does not work. And you don't hear a lot about these college stars in the NBA until the 4th, 5th year that they're pros. That is it. NBA has trended in a completely different direction. I'll get into that as well. But college basketball for the last few years has not looked the same. Once I filled this bracket out all throughout the week and showcased it yesterday, this was the most obvious, like, bracketeering feeling I've ever done in my life. Usually, when I watch the games, there's always a game or a team that that wows me, but also surprises me in a way. This year, not so much. I mean, as I look at it, Connecticut seems like the obvious team to win and at least get further and further, possibly into the Final Four. Then I look at all the rest of them. And as of right now, the games that are basically edged on into round 2, into round 30, a round of 32, I've taken Duquesne and Illinois, and they're both facing off. North Carolina, Michigan State seemed very obvious. Then there's Dayton, Arizona. I predicted that. And then I've got Oregon and Creighton. Now, many teams might shock me, but right now, it's kind of looking like it's trending towards this was an obvious filling. Now, I know it's early, and I'm not going to disregard and I'm not going to disrespect all the other programs. But the fact of the matter is that it was not a wowing year when it came to offensively, defensively, and even when it came to coaching styles. Maybe, and I'm thinking about this, because the only Cinderella story that I have is Duquesne. I think they might make it into the Sweet 16, but I don't know if they have enough firepower really to get into the Elite 8. Maybe. They might shock me. But their coach has done something that they've never done in 55 years, and that is win in a March Madness tournament. They won a game. Good for them. They are my Cinderella team. Usually what happens, these are the ones who create the upsets, and these are the ones that eventually, the longer that they go, they get burnt out. That's what happens. But they're fun stories. Loyola Chicago was one of them. Everybody all rant and raved about Wichita State, that they had such a great basketball program. But this always happens with Cinderella teams because if you don't have a track record like a Duke or a North Carolina or a Florida or a Kentucky, it's very, very hard, even a Kansas, very hard to be taken seriously in the tournament. But I think this year, the tournament seems very wide open. But like I said, my prediction up on it, I've predicted North Carolina to win this whole thing because it just seems like the very obvious pick. But I thought I would have gotten more. I'm not disrespecting or disregarding Purdue or Arizona or a Michigan State. I'm not doing that, let alone a Dayton. But what I am doing is that it's creating a lot of clarity into what the direction that the college basketball world is going into with the NIL, with all these invitationals. It just doesn't seem sexy. It doesn't even seem like it's kind of something that's going to drive me to a television. Not like what Anthony Davis or Zion or John Wall or multiple players have done. Not even in great programs like Roy Williams in North Carolina or several others in Kansas. It's not the same. So even though that am always excited about March Madness and I've got my bracket already filled out, I just don't have the same feeling about March Madness than I have in probably like the past 10, 15 years. Since we've watched college basketball, it's trended in a different direction. Kind of hard to really feel great about it, hype up for the sport, hype up for the tournament. It's very hard to do so. Now, this is also what leads into this segment about the NBA. So what does this mean about the future of the NBA? So as you're watching college basketball now in the March Madness tournament, which still is very entertaining, I'm sure that they will definitely get their views. But this is the year for the fans because it feels like lots of these picks, as you filled out your bracket, it seemed like it was very obvious. But the NBA and what it's trended towards, like I said, like hockey and like Major League Baseball, it's taken over by international stars. Look at Shohei Ohtani in Major League Baseball. Unbelievable. Two-way player, DH pitcher. The guy is unreal. Got paid massive amount of dollars. So Shohei Ohtani is clearly going to be the next phase of Major League Baseball. No disrespect to Mike Trout. He's been doing it for years. But international stars, you can see it. They're all over. Japan, Dominican, Cuba. Lots of different players have been migrating from all over the world. And they're playing in a game collectively. And we still have good mixtures, if not half, of our stars that are domestic players. And a lot of them, they're pretty damn good. Mike Trout, Pete Alonso, Bryce Harper, many of them. Okay, so Major League Baseball has a heartbeat in it. In hockey, when was the last, we barely have at least a whole lot of domestic stars outside of Austin Matthews and TJ Oshie. You've got Nikita Kucherov, you've got David Pastrnak, you've got Connor McDavid, you've got multiples from Canada, Russia, Sweden, and even in Czech Republic. You got an awful lot of these stars all over the world. Hockey's not ours. It's never been ours. The hockey capital of the world has always been Canada or a Russia, all the international countries. But then you look at the NBA and what it's basically stemmed on. NBA at one point was very domestic. Then it started to get international. And then as it did, the Pau Gasols, the Victor Wembanyama's, the Giannis, the Luka Doncic's, and the Nikola Jokic's of the world all started to migrate. Lots of them. And our domestic players, how long are we going to honestly, look toward LeBron being the only domestic player that has been around in this league for a very long time? I know LeBron craves attention, but right now, Jason Tatum seems to be the only domestic star that's really good. Honorable mentions, Anthony Edwards. There's several other players, but it does not compare to what the star talents that these international players. Luka Doncic was already playing NBA-style basketball since he was 15 in Slovenia, okay? In Latvia, where you got guys that are in their mid-30s and in their 40s, and they are pressurizing you, they're isolating you, they're putting in, like, they've got you in their face. Like, and Luka Doncic was able to play that kind of style of basketball at age 15. And he turned out well. Still questions, but he turned out well. Nikola Jokic, Denver's going to look to be going back-to-back. The Nuggets are great. And they don't have big-time superstars outside of Jokic. I mean, Jamal Murray, he's never been nominated as an all-star, but it doesn't matter. He's great in the playoffs. He's great whenever you need a shot and you need a pass. And they've got a collective group under Mike Malone, who's a very great coach. He's not a young coach. He's one with experience, understands the league, but he also understands the players he has. But for Adam Silver to honestly understand this, from the NIL to the invitationals and the promotions and so much more, and even the sponsorships, I mean, this is a lot for kids. This is a lot for kids growing up watching basketball that eventually will become NBA stars. Many of them are leaving college after the first year. This one-and-done program doesn't work. I mean, when was the last time you ever seen the NFL ever use the one-and-done deal? You know how hard that would crash land on the NFL? Wouldn't look good. Go and get 3 years, 4 years experience. Whether you're a quarterback, a wide receiver, a running back, an offensive line, an edge rusher, or a corner or safety. You get 3-4 years in college. That's the norm. 3-4 years to be eligible for the draft. I mean, when I looked at Cameron Ward, the quarterback at Washington State before he ended up going to Miami, like, he declared for the draft. Good luck being a day 3, day 4 quarterback, because that's what you are. He realized it, and he got a wake-up call, and then that's when, I'm coming back to college. I'm going to Miami. That was the smartest decision he could do, because you know that they were not going to be ready yet. Not mentally prepared, not physically prepared. Even the workload's different. College, it's hard to translate in the NFL. That's why at least the standard for NFL, for college football players, for college football athletes, 4 years is at the very least the maximum. 3 years is at least the minimum. They're not going to ask a kid to go into the NFL by year 2, year 1. Doesn't work. All these college basketball players, you don't hear about them until year 4, year 5 in the NBA. You don't. Because now you've got college, and then you've got the G League, you've got international play everywhere. They're all over the place. They're in shambles. Adam Silver needs to get this straightened out, and he needs to have a proper structure. I fear that because Adam Silver and the way that he's kind of commissioned everything. Now, I don't blame it all on him, but I do think that there is a part of this with the NBA you need to get right. Seriously. Because if this does not work for at least the next 5-10 years, then you could kiss, like, the big-time talents. You could kiss it goodbye. Because it's not going to be there. It's not going to be there until year 5. So, again, I love March Madness. I like NBA. But sometimes I would wish the NBA would, at the very least, get it right. Because LeBron James, we're not going to look to him as like the only domestic player on the planet. We're not. There's going to be a new breed of players. But I think if you do with what's right, like just what the NFL does, if you have them to a 3-4 year minimum, then these players could grow. You'll get players coming into the NBA at age 22, 23 instead of age 17, 18 that are not mentally matured and prepared for the NFL. They're not, or the NBA, they're not prepared for the physical beatings that they're going to get in the NBA. They're not. They got to beef up. I even preached about this with hockey. You get a lot of these young hockey players, they're getting roughed up in the rookie season. I watched Cody Glass before he ended up going to Nashville. He got roughed up in Vegas so badly, suffered injuries because guys were going after his head. So if you really think mentally mature, you honestly think that if you're prepared for the NBA, and at least in this atmosphere, this environment, at age 17, you're joking yourself. It's a totally different ball game from here. It's not the same. So I just think Adam Silver just needs to get this straightened out, needs to have a better structure. But seriously, it needs to be better. I'm kind of tired of it because at the end of the day, basketball is becoming more of a snooze fest every single day. And I love March Madness, but the last thing I want is March Madness to feel so obvious when I'm filling out the bracket. I don't want it to feel that way. I want it to be able to be like madness. Like I didn't see that coming. That's what I want. But NBA, you can't really ask for anything. Good stuff. I'm tapping into a lot of these conversations that we're not having collectively as a society. We're not. So good stuff. Cool McCain's going to be joining us here in the bottom half of the hour. I'm really excited to have him on. Lots and lots to cover. But yeah, we're tapping into it today. And I know tomorrow's Friday, so of course, I'm getting all of these in at least before the end of the week. So you know how it is with me. So but we're tapping into the most important stuff. So I'm glad for it. All right, folks. Well, coming up next, there's one division in the NFL after watching free agency and also dissecting and evaluating the NFL draft. There's one division that I think could really be interesting and intriguing. Might catch people by surprise. I'll tell you exactly what division that may be and why here coming up next. All right, folks. Well, it's madness time right now here in the month of March, as you already know. That's because March Madness is upon us. The tournament has officially started. I'm 8 for 8, by the way, with all my picks. But for those of you who have gotten your brackets done or are trying to, at the very least, get your brackets in, BetUS has you covered with all of the best sports lines guaranteed for college basketball madness, all just for you. Go online to BetUS.com and start betting on your favorite lines, whether it's straight or parlay leg bets, whatever it is. BetUS has you covered up on it. That's why they've been the best 30 years running in the business. But BetUS also, as part of March Madness events, when you deposit $100 into your first deposit, you'll get a free entry into their $1 million contest, all during March Madness. You do not want to end up missing out on the great opportunity that BetUS has for you during March Madness time. I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be a fun contest. So check it out for yourself at BetUS.com. Link is in the description. BetUS, where the game begins.
Listen up, sports fans. Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
Check out the Con Man live on the Sports Corner, coming to a screen near you, giving you the greatest stories from basketball legends you've never seen before. Sharing their glory, building the toughness, and how they show off their swag. But only one man knows all that, and that's the Con Man. Join Michael Conceição, the Con Man, at the Sports Corner, Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 Pacific on Sportsway Network.
Snake Sports Talk Show is sponsored by Muscle Tech, with hundreds of supplements and vitamins to choose from, all packed with 100% all-natural proven ingredients. You can be sure that Muscle Tech will give you the edge and the boost to train and look like your fit and healthy best, whatever your goals are. Try Muscle Tech today and use promo code SNAKESPORTS to save 30% off your purchases.
When you need to find your seat for your next event, wherever it may be, whether it's your next sporting event or your next live concert with your favorite artists, get you closer into the action, or even at your favorite comedy shows, wherever it may be, SeatGeek has you covered up on it. SeatGeek.com, or download it on your mobile device or Google Play in the App Store and use promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off of your purchase. That's SeatGeek.com. Promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off. So I started thinking about this so there's one division in the NFL that really is catching my attention, and it's very intriguing to me. And so it's not the AFC West. It's not the NFC West. It's not even the AFC South. But the one division that is really catching my attention that's a little more intriguing is surprisingly the NFC South. Why would this be? Because I think one of the biggest reasons that it is because Tampa Bay last year, they won the division and they also won a playoff game with a defensive coach, with Baker Mayfield. And they had a veteran receiver who's been doing this for a long time, is Mike Evans. You've got really good components from there. Now, they did lose a lot of defensive players. Shaq Barrett, Devin White, who knows what happens with Levante David, and they also lost Carlton Davis. So part of this reason is because, one, they don't want to let go of Antoine Winfield. They don't. So I think at this position, Tampa Bay is still going to be a solid team. You bring back Baker Mayfield, you bring back Mike Evans, you're not going to break up this band. So I think in the end, Tampa was very smart about this. New Orleans, year 2 with Derek Carr. Let's see what happens. Now, I don't trust Dennis Allen that much because he's only won 35% of his games. I'm surprised he still even has a job because at this point, I don't know what Mickey Loomis is doing in New Orleans, but I'm surprised that Dennis Allen even has a job. But they let go of Michael Thomas, too injury prone. Plus, he's had a little bit of some incidences is here and there. But you got Chris Olave. You got at least a decent run game and an offensive line that's pretty good and a defense that you know is already stacked and loaded, and now they've added in Chase Young. So, but the team that's really going to be intriguing to me is the Atlanta Falcons, and for many, many, many reasons. So I already know Carolina is basically a dumpster fire at this point because ownership, not great, but I'm hoping the GM and the head coach really do the best they can for Bryce Young. I've touched upon this subject before with a fellow guest of mine, Rod Smith. I've talked about this subject, and Carolina is just an absolute dumpster fire. But, however, Atlanta is intriguing to me. Not only is it that they signed Kirk Cousins to a 4-year contract, but look at some of the pieces that he has around him. He's got a dual running back set with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. He also has Kyle Pitts, the tight end. Hopefully he gets more targets this time because I've been waiting to see Kyle Pitts pop since his rookie year in Florida. And not only that, but they also got Darnell Mooney from the Bears next to Drake London. That's a heck of a wide receiver class. And hopefully it's going to be a lot better. It's a good wide receiver room. So, and depending on it, they might actually go and get a receiver because they're not going to take a quarterback. Not if you've got Kirk Cousins for 4 years. And to be totally honest with you, I applaud Kirk Cousins for the amount of guarantee that this dude is getting. Because already in the years that he's been in the NFL, he has not been screwed over of any contract whatsoever since he first entered the league. He's the greatest salesman in the NFL. God, I would love to have the contact number of his agent because he's getting $100 million guaranteed out of the 160 he's getting for 40 for 4 years. So Kirk Cousins, and I know a lot of people don't really think it's that attractive or it's that popular, but at least with Kirk Cousins, you're getting efficient passing. You're getting somebody who really does score more touchdowns, throws in more in the end zone. But I know as far as primetime games and as far as playoff atmosphere, not as great. However, you are going to get the best with Kirk Cousins. And in a wonky division like the NFC South, which really intrigues me, because Tampa's going to run this thing back with the core they have. And then you've got New Orleans, which hopefully Derek Carr's much better in year 2. But I'll be honest with you. I think with Atlanta, this adds a lot more competition. And they've got a better coach. They've got a better offensive coordinator. Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson was, I think, arguably was the best hires that Atlanta could do. People that thought that Atlanta was going to end up hiring Bill Belichick. I mean, Arthur Blank wanted him so bad, but yet the front offices was so smart that it's like, no, Arthur, we're not going to do that. We're not going to have somebody that's old, that's prickled, that's one-dimensional at this point really lead us to the promised land because it's outdated. So the right thing that they could do is somebody with familiarity in the building. You also get somebody very, very close to Sean McVay's tree. You get Zach Robinson as your offensive coordinator. You fix this offense up. Because last year, the important component that the Falcons did better, regardless of Arthur Smith, they fixed up defense. Jesse Bates, hell of a signing. And I think Cincinnati, unfortunately, kicks themselves in the back for losing a really good quality player like that. But you are getting the best from a lot of these different players. And so they fixed up defense. Raheem Morris is a young defensive guy, but he's very smart. Sean McVay has a lot of praise for him. But he goes and gets one of his best coworkers in Zach Robinson, who trusts his offensive philosophy. And Sean McVay has had multiple coordinators come and go all over, and they've all gotten great jobs. I think the only person who was an absolute whiff was Brandon Staley. That's it. But Sean McVay hit a home run with Kevin O'Connell. He's hit a home run with, Zach Robinson, and he's hit a home run with Raheem Morris. So I'm not doubting Sean McVay's tree. So at this point, you got to get the offense right. And I think Atlanta has started to do that. Now, they do have the top 10 pick in the draft, but they might go and get a receiver, or they might go and get offensive line, whatever it may be. But lots and lots of these, predictions with as far as, draft picks, and I will have my mock draft. I'll have it at some point soon because there's going to be 2 of them that I'll do. I'll have my mock draft that's basically my pre-draft, and then as we get a little bit closer into April, I will have my second one. So it kind of gives a little bit of familiarity and it gets a little bit of clarity from here. But I think Atlanta, the sky's the limit. The possibilities are endless. And I'm not saying Kirk Cousins is all that, like he's a Mahomes or any of that. But I do think you are getting with what you're getting with Kirk Cousins. A guy that knows how to score on offense, gives you at least the best throws. You're getting at least young receivers like Drake London and Darnell Mooney all the way around. You got Kyle Pitts, a very athletic tight end who both does pass catching and blocking. And you've also got a very good dual threat tailback game with Bijan and Tyler Algier. I think this is honestly the best option that you can have for Atlanta. They'll win more games. I anticipate them that if they won 10 games or possibly 11 with Raheem Morris, that's a pretty damn good upgrade. That's a good upgrade. And that now builds competition in the division. So, however you outlook this, I know it may seem wonky because Carolina's a dumpster fire. New Orleans needed to shed away all of that cap, and hopefully Derek Carr gets himself right in year 2 in this organization. But then you've got Tampa Bay, fresh from a division title, fresh from winning a playoff game against Philadelphia of all teams. This was not like Carolina. This was not like, Chicago. It was Philadelphia that Tampa Bay won their playoff game with a defensive coach in Baker Mayfield. So Atlanta's got a lot to prove. And I think, honestly, if you're proving that defense was the biggest adjuster, they did a great job. And Jesse Bates, perfect. So I think you are going to get the best version of the Falcons. I don't think it's going to be great all throughout the NFC because we got the Lions, we got the Packers, we've got the Vikings, we've got the Eagles, we've got, the Commanders of all teams. But I think Atlanta, I think it could be a sure shot. It could either be a division or it could be a wild card team. That's what I'm predicting from here. But I think it's fair to say that with a quarterback like Kirk Cousins, that you are going to be a playoff team with the offensive presence you have, with a young, innovative defensive coach who's working his side of the ball, which they did that perfectly last season. So I think the possibilities in Atlanta are endless, and I'm excited for them. All right, time for the news.
This is the Hot Press.
So lots of news in the world of sports, and as we're tapping up into it, but one of the conversations, of course, is that in Major League Baseball, as we're tapping into it, Major League Baseball's biggest, brightest star on the Los Angeles Dodgers, Shohei Ohtani, ended up firing his interpreter because of so-called massive money that was stolen out of his account, $4.5 million. They fired his interpreter, and now Ohtani's reps are asking for a probe into the theft. So the whole conversation about this was, and this was kind of shady, is that, one, the interpreter and Shohei Ohtani have had a long-lasting relationship as friends for years, and this stemmed from the time in Japan. But the whole narrative and the quote of this is that apparently Shohei Ohtani gave him $4.5 million of the many millions that Shohei Ohtani is making this year. But the other thing is that there's also a narrative saying that the interpreter stole from Shohei Ohtani. So which is it? I think in the end, hopefully, and people are thinking that this is for betting reasons. It was for gambling reasons. I'm hoping that Shohei Ohtani does not end up pulling off a Pete Rose in this kind of conversation when it comes to betting in Major League Baseball, because then that's different. But I'm not going to feel outraged. And Cowherd said it best, is that, we've had a lot of this stuff happen even before they became legalized. Like gambling was a huge thing. It's not illegal in Nevada. It didn't stop them from creating their culture, and that's exactly what it is. Sports betting is worldwide so popular. 56% of Americans end up using it, and at some point it might get to 75, 76% very, very soon. But the big thing is that, Shohei Ohtani, big star, big stud in Los Angeles, goes to the Dodgers for big-time money. Of course there's going to be a lot of temptations. That's what happens when you live in a big city. In Los Angeles, in New York, in Dallas, in Chicago, there's always temptations around. There are higher expectations at the same time, too. So hopefully we get a little bit of clarity into this investigation, but they are sending a probe into the theft, and hopefully we can understand what the whole cause and what the reason of that was. Okay, so interesting thing, and so into the NFL. So the Detroit Lions are dealing with a serious issue involving one of their players. Now, earlier on, the Detroit Lions have announced that they have released veteran cornerback Cameron Sutton. So, and in this whole entire investigation is that Cameron Sutton right now, who has been on the run for 2 weeks by authorities, he is still wanted in Florida for his alleged involvement in a domestic violence case. So he's facing a charge of a domestic battery by strangulation, a third-degree felony punishable for up to 5 years in prison. One of the spokesperson in Hillsborough County Sheriff's offices basically had announced they're still continuing to try to contact Sutton's attorney, but they've been unable to locate Sutton since March 7th. Look, I'm not big when it comes to Steve, send me a direct message on our platform, and I will definitely get back to you upon it for a potential opportunity. But I think, to me personally, like with this whole thing is that Cameron Sutton being on the run, you're running from authorities, and it's been 2 weeks now. It's not a good look. And at the same time, the organization, they don't want to end up dealing with the whole drama, and they don't want to end up dealing with this whole fiasco. So it was better off to basically cut Cameron Sutton, and I don't blame them for that. But again, multiple people, like there's a lot of different stories and a lot of different narratives about this, saying that, for as far as the charge, he either was or he wasn't involved. I think the other reason of this is maybe it's wrongful. I don't know. But when you're running from the authorities for 2 weeks since March 7th, kind of seems pretty bad. You already know that there's already going to be something that's going to be shedding the light on it, and you already know it's not going to look good. So hopefully we get an answer on this one, because that's already two really big stories that's been happening at least around, in the world of sports. But sticking to the NFL. So this was an interesting topic. I'll talk about this a little bit more, but the NFL officials backed the proposed hip drop tackle rule change and amid protests. So NFL officials responded today with protests over a proposal to outlaw a version of the hip drop tackle, a technique the league says has resulted in an injury rate that has been up to 25 times higher than on tackles when it is not employed. Isn't that interesting? Troy Vincent, the NFL's executive vice president, basically said, as gatekeepers of the game, this is something that we have to remove. Also ended up going on and continuing on. The next comment was through the competition committee chairman, Richie McCain. The proposed rule was written to address only a subset of the rugby tackling style that has spread around the NFL in recent years. It calls for a 15-yard penalty if a defender grabs the runner with both hands or wraps the runner with both arms and unweights himself by swiveling and dropping his hips and or lower body, landing on and trapping the runner's legs at or below the knees. I'm not opposed to this rule. And I will tell you this for many, many reasons. I'll talk about this a little bit more. But I'm not opposed to this ruling. And the only reason of it is because when your legs get trapped from under you, and let's say your ankle gets twisted or your tibia, like your fibula, your tibia starts to shatter, it's gross. It's the most horrific injury that any football player, any sport player would end up suffering. But again, I'm not opposed to that. But I mean, think about it this way. It's kind of like how we felt when it came to like the horse collar rule, or when it came to a couple of other different rules that the NFL has implemented. Now, I'm not saying the NFL is getting soft, but I think at the same time, I mean, an injury like this is serious. It's not good. And so to me personally, I mean, I think this is the right thing to do. Outlaw this to where the player's safety continues to be A+, and at the same time, you have long tenures with players without suffering any types of, setbacks or conditions that might harm the player's career. So, but again, I think this ruling, and I mean, I've seen this happen multiple times, whether it's turf toe or whether it's, knee injuries, hyperextension knees, or even if it's just a break or a twist, whatever it is, it's very, very gruesome. It's horrible. The most horrible pain that a lot of these athletes from the lower body down could ever suffer. So I'm not opposed to this rule. I think, honestly, this really does help with keeping players on the field. I don't think as far as softening the game, if this is I honestly don't think it's going to trend in this direction, but I do think this is better to kind of clean some things up. And I do think the NFL is taking the right step in the right direction when it comes to that. So I like the ruling. I think honestly, this is going to pass with flying colors. And I think this is perfect because this has been a growing topic in the last few years that people have been outraged by. So, and again, I want I want better tackles. I want cleaner tackles, not something like this. Like better tackles, like anything that's up front, straightforward. Doesn't have to be helmet to helmet. You just got to be able to throw a shoulder. So, again, I hope that they improve up in tackles. And they've got to teach a lot of these kids. They got to teach them the proper ways of tackling without injuring themselves or injuring others, however that this ends up panning out. But again, injuries are prone to happen. But if you want to keep the lifespan and their careers on the field, these are the kinds of moves that you got to make. So I'm not opposed to this rule. I think this is a good idea. All right, so that was the news.
This is the hot press.
Coming up next here soon, we've got Cool McCain dropping by. We're going to be talking a lot about the Philadelphia Eagles. Also be talking a little bit about the NBA playoffs, March Madness as well, what to expect from here. But so much to really go around. But we're going to take a quick break from here. Well, guys, as I've said before, lots of deals happening in Sports Wave Network's Fourth Wall merchandise website. Available now from all of your favorite shows, including this one here. Your home at Sports Wave Network at sportswavenetwork.com. Go online, shop now. Shop of over hundreds of different merchandise styles from your favorite shows like this one on the Snake Sports Talk Show and many, many more. Keep yourselves up to date with promo codes and deals and discounts happening all month long. That's at sportswavenetwork.com. Merchandise as well, all online now, so you don't want to end up missing that. That's at sportswavenetwork.com on their merchandise section. Get geared up. And when you do end up getting your gear, send us a picture, snap a photo, so we could showcase you on all of our social medias as a way of saying thank you for your supports on the network and for the shows on the network as well. Appreciate all of you guys. Check it out now at sportswavenetwork.com.
Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing view of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts to get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket, and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top.
Yo, no, I ain't the type to give up. If I do something, man, I do it till I get what I want. I turn a business out of nothing into something I love. I got a poker face, but honestly, I'm not one to bluff. I flip a switch, never miss, man, I always stay up. Don't let them see you, bitch, always have a plan to stay tough. This life ahead of you ain't easy, it was built to be rough. But that's what makes a personality, is tragedy, bruh. So keep your head on your shoulders. Now we ain't out here moving rocks, we out here moving.
Cannot wait. Once Bull McCain ends up getting up on here, we are tapping into it with the NFC East. Because honestly, there is a lot of things to break down as far as what the division is shaping like. And I think a lot of people kind of understand what I'm about to say with this. So in the previous episodes that I've talked about here on the show, free agency has been fantastic, by the way. I mean, free agency has been nuts. You know, the NFL draft analysis, it's been nuts. But I think, NFL free agencies, in my opinion, has really been the only component that's made clarity. Like, it's made a lot of clarity. It has. And I think in the end, like, I've watched this several times now with the NFL, and it's always been so good. I've never had any problem whatsoever. I've had no problems with how they've been handling with the free agency and so much more. But I think it's pretty clear. I think in many instances, and part of this reason that I think, because many teams that have shifted, some of it is basically contract reasons, and some of it I think is because as we start to move and as we start to shift, the NFL is getting bigger and better. Like this draft, it's big on quarterbacks, wide receivers, offensive linemen, that's it. And you've probably got one of the greatest tight end prospects right now in Brock Bowers. But outside of all that, it's not great at edge rushers. It's not that great at running backs, at least from the three that I've evaluated that have been really, really good. But outside of that, no great running backs. But then the others, there's only about a good handful of corners that I think could compete in this league. But then that's it. Safeties is not as great. Hopefully linebackers, they shape up real well. But I think it's honestly, to its sincerity, is that this is more pivoting to offense. Look at a lot of teams that have been pivoting to offense now. Atlanta, they were great at defense. They've pivoted to offense, and they're pivoting it at the right time. They're not paying much of anybody. So they've got some money to spare. Then you got Detroit at one point, but we thought that they were so big up on defense that their offense was not really as great. And then you look at them now. They pivoted to offense. Now they pivoted to an entire culture with Dan Campbell. Washington, defense was atrocious. And so then they started to upgrade them through the free agent market, and they get Austin Eckler. They get a couple of other really good players. They traded away Sam Howell to Seattle, and they're going to draft a quarterback. That's obvious. But they've already got two really good receivers I like, Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson. So Washington is on the come up. There's several players and several teams that I'm seeing that are really going to make a good splash. Washington's one of them. Chicago, it's obvious they're going to take Caleb Williams. They'll be a much better and much improved football team because Matt Eberflus worked on the defense, and the defense got better. The second they got Montez Sweat from Washington, they were a better football team. I don't care what anybody says. They've gotten to be a better football team, and they're much better the second they ended up getting DeAndre Swift and they got Keenan Allen. So, and you already have DJ Moore as a young wide receiver. So Chicago is primed for success. Caleb Williams, when he comes into this offense with a building offensive line that's actually going to get better, and they're going to build more through the draft, I'm sure, but Ryan Poles has finally pivoted in the right side of the ball. Washington got themselves a much more competent GM. They've got a different breed now at head coach when it comes to Dan Campbell because they took a lot of Dallas's players. And so they've got a really good offense. They've shaped up the defense really, really well. And now the only team that I'm questionable about is the Rams without Aaron Donald, now that he's retired. I think the big thing that you kind of have to look at is for next season in the NFC. This is the wave. This is the absolute wave I've been waiting for. Is the wave of quarterbacks that could honestly make it in. So, and a lot of these NFC teams, Atlanta's not taking a quarterback. Washington's going to certainly take a quarterback, and so will Minnesota and Chicago. So, of these top picks, with a lot of these quarterbacks that we have, Chicago's going to get Caleb Williams. Washington's going to get either Jaden Daniels from what it sounds like, or it could be a different quarterback we did not even prepare ourselves for. Minnesota, I feel like J.J. McCarthy or Bo Nix might end up working there. But it could be a tie between them and Denver. But as far as what I know, the Giants now are done with Daniel Jones. I don't know how that could honestly work because you paid the wrong guy. It didn't work. It was terrible. And I think, honestly, you're better off moving on. But you got to also have a promising offense. So that's going to be a lot for the Giants to really ask for. I'm being honest and sincere about that. So I think that might be a lot for the Giants to really kind of look forward to. But, I mean, I look at right now the team that only made one move. One is the Dallas Cowboys. And I know what a lot of you may be thinking. I'm thinking the same exact way as well. But the Cowboys, you're paying Dak almost over $60 million a year. And what has Dak done since his rookie season? Dak hasn't really proven himself to be that top tier of a quarterback. I love him as a podium guy. Love his football IQ when it comes to smart, not making too many mistakes. But Michael Gallup is gone. And a lot of your defensive players, including Leighton Vander Esch, who had to retire because of an injury. You lost a really good asset in defense, multiple assets on defense. And furthermore, you lost your run game and you've lost Tyron Smith. You could barely pay for anybody else. This is all part of Jerry Jones's, this is all of his disaster. This is why I've said before, Dan Quinn is going to very much succeed out of Jerry Jones's shadow. Many coaches who have come and gone from this organization have had better successes outside of Jerry Jones's shadows. Because honestly, Jerry hasn't been able to empty out the skeletons in his closet that he still has longed for a long time. This is with Jimmy Johnson and this is with Bill Parcells. And so the Cowboys, the only move they made was signing Eric Kendricks. That's it. I mean, I couldn't believe it. But I think at the end of the day, as you start to really look at what the Cowboys really are about, it's not as great. It's not. And I've been telling people this for a very long time. But the Cowboys, you're going to eat up that contract. All of it. It's not good. It's not a good look for them. The team will not look the same. And at the same time, it's CeeDee Lamb crossing your fingers. He does not get hurt, because then that's when disaster strikes. And again, Mike McCarthy, he hasn't been able to win against Green Bay since he's been a Cowboys coach. And that's with Aaron, and that's with Jordan Love. So that's even more embarrassing. But I think we kind of understand who the Cowboys are. We've been understanding who the Cowboys are. Philadelphia now has a mulligan this year with new coordinators, and you've got Saquon Barkley, which was a big home run for them for the run game. And they've also got a couple defensive pieces, and they bring back C.J. Gardner-Johnson. So the Eagles are clearly going to be a team that is looking for a mulligan, and they'll be much, much better than what last year gave them. So there's that. But I think, honestly, it's kind of, this is kind of the year as multiple quarterbacks come into the league, whether AFC or the NFC, there's going to be teams looking for quarterbacks. And when the new wave of quarterbacks happen, and especially what I'm anticipating is the NFC starts to stack up with them, this is going to be a much better look. So I'm excited about this. But I think Dallas really needs to look at a really hard look in the mirror. And they need to ask themselves. They need to be honest. Because Dak is not all that. Dak is not Mahomes. Dak is not Burrow. And he's not Herbert. And he's not a whole lot of these big-time quarterbacks. He's not even Lamar Jackson, who came off of an MVP. So, again, I'm the kind that I always like to be glass half full. But I am not. I have not bought in with the Dallas Cowboys. Sometimes they always hype it up very, very high, and I often start to question whether or not if the hype is really real. Because again, this is the same old Cowboys. It just looked very, very different. And for them to only make one move tells you they are trapped. They are trapped. And it's because Jerry stuck to his guns and said, we love our players, love Dak, love all this stuff. Come on, Jerry, look at the mirror. This is not a coincidence, and this is not something that's new with Cowboys. It's not. Like, winning teams are ones that actually get to the playoffs and win playoff games. That's winning teams. Not ones that are basically looking to secure their brand and try to make more millions as they're winning games, and then you're paying Dak over $60 million a year. That's not a winning team. That's more foosball than anything else. But as far as the Flyers, Steve, the only thing I can say about them is, and yeah, it is a rebuilding. It's a rebuilding year for them. But as I'm looking at the standings currently, I mean, it could be possible. But then again, how well is Detroit playing? Like, that's the one thing. I mean, I think the Flyers could very much make it in, but it depends on whether or not if the Red Wings or other teams that basically can sneak in. But I think if the Flyers get into the playoffs, they aren't, in my eyes, they're not a playoff team in my eyes because they've lost their goaltender, but they do have some good pieces. I can admit that. But at the same time, there's other things that need to work. There's other things that need to be fixed. But I think honestly, they were on the right path. But I just don't see them as a playoff team in my eyes. They can make it in there, but I don't see them really getting as far into the playoffs. And I know that kind of sucks to say that for at least for Flyer fans, but honestly, it's This is kind of what you're getting. And baseball news as well, real quick. The Mets ended up signing JD Martinez to a 1-year, $12 million deal. Honestly, I anticipated this move to happen for multiple reasons. Mets need a power bat and a guy as a DH who doesn't really have to play a whole lot of defense. All you have his offense. Finally, they could have the battery that Francisco Lindor and Pete Alonso have been looking for desperately. I think they finally found it. And I think this is the right move for the Mets. So I think, honestly, this was the right move. I actually kind of like this, low key. I think they finally figured out what their real issue is, and I think they finally stabilized their lineup for the most part. And in college basketball news, quickly, so far, I'm now 9 for 9. And right now, Iowa State is leading South Dakota State 54-41. I took Iowa State. And as far as other games currently going on, Texas won 56-44. No surprise, no coincidence. Picked them to win. And as of right now, Gonzaga is beating McNeese. So I probably will be 10 for 10 by the end of the night. That's the first time. Honestly, folks, this is a good one. And the last game is Washington State and Drake. I've got Washington State tonight. So if I end up going 10 for 10 and potentially 11 for 11, that's a great night to sleep on. That's a great night to sleep on. So I'm excited. I'm excited about it. All right. All right. So as we're waiting for Cool to get in here, because we've had a lot talking about, from other different stories, from NFL to NBA, college basketball. Great. Oh, get him the link here. All right, let's see if we can get him in. All right, so as we're waiting for it, I mean, like I said, I'm not saying that this college basketball tournament is a snooze fest. I hate saying that for as long as I've watched college basketball. I mean, but these were the most obvious picks that anybody could have even thought of. And I looked at it recently. Where was it? Yeah. I'm part of the 1.74% that still have a perfect bracket. I still got a perfect bracket amongst us, but I swear to you, and I think Cool's probably going to smile and laugh his ass off. But if I honestly go 10 for 10, and the last game with Washington State tonight, if I end up going 11 for 11, that is a very impressive start to college basketball. But all right, but joining us, of course, talking a little bit more about college basketball and also talking about what the Philadelphia Eagles have been brewing up and really gearing up for next season, my good man, Cool McCain. So I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think Saquon Barkley is dead to me. I'm actually more on the side of I'm happy that he's actually in a better playing environment. So let's start there with the Philadelphia Eagles. So you know it, and I've been talking about it multiple times in the group chat that I felt like this is the mulligan year that the Eagles have with Nick Sirianni, and now with new coordinators with Kellen Moore and with Vic Fangio. This now, they go and get Saquon Barkley. They go and bring back C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Does it feel like that this, and I think most of this is more of a payback year because the Cowboys are unraveling. How do you kind of see this right now with Philadelphia?
Honestly, I would have rather had Swift back. I think it would have been more financially feasible too. But I'm not upset with the Barkley pick. I'm just hoping he stays healthy. And I also want to add, you and his daughter are very excited that he's in Philadelphia. Because his daughter asked him, does that mean we're going to win now, Dad? So she is also excited that they're in Philadelphia. But I think you have to look at the totality of the moves. Like a lot of people want to point to Saquon Barkley, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson coming back with C.J. Gardner-Johnson, as he likes to be called now, back. But I think those moves, while they're helpful, there's some other very impactful moves. Devontae Parker, right? A lot of people say, "Oh, you got Devontae Parker. Good luck." Well, if you look back over his career, he was places where they were asking him to be a 1 or a 1A. We're asking him to be a 3 or a 4. If he cannot be a 3 or 4 receiver, it's time for him to get up out of the league. But I'm confident that he'll be able to do what we need him to do for our team, right? And then you look at another sneaky signing that everybody will be paying attention to later is going to be Matt Hennessy. So Matt Hennessy's a guard and a center in one. So he's a versatile piece. And one of the things that we always preached until last year when, as I like to call him, Nicky Tight Pants took over as the guy making the decisions, we always had a lot of guys that were versatile. So, hey, Hennessy's a guy. Landon Dickerson goes down. He can't play. You can put him in there. Cam Jurgens goes down. You can put him in there. Tyler Steen goes down or isn't playing as well as we want him to. Matt Hennessy can play both guards and center. So versatile pieces are important. A lot of people ask about Kenny Pickett, right? So I simply say to Kenny Pickett, this feels like a store and trade later on in the season, because we're going to have some teams are going to have injuries at quarterback, whether it's their starter, whether it's their backup, and they're going to be on the market looking for somebody to come in and at least be the backup quarterback. So you go with a guy that's unsigned and nobody wants, or a guy that's already on the roster that you maybe give up a 4th round pick for. That's a move that speaks Howie to me. So while a lot of people aren't excited about it, it makes perfect sense in what we like to do. And then the other big signing besides, go ahead, Jake.
And you know what's funny about that, and with the Kenny Pickett situation, and like I talked about in yesterday's episode about Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, why wouldn't you want a perfect insurance plan? I don't know what people get outraged about this, because if there's anything we've learned from last year, Joe Burrow got hurt. In comes Jake Browning. He's the perfect backup. And then Anthony Richardson, he gets hurt. In comes Gardner Minshew, perfect backup. And then, I mean, not as great of a backup in Easton Stick, but when Justin Herbert went down, you knew, I mean, you got to kind of have that insurance policy. So I'm like, I think this was perfect for Philadelphia and Kenny Pickett's situation, because in the end, I know people are like, well, he did not want to end up dealing with this quarterback, competition in Pittsburgh. But then that doesn't mean it's going to be any better with, Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is clearly your number one, but that does allow a little more competition to where if something were to happen. And I also see this, Kenny Pickett's got legs. And I think like what Pittsburgh will potentially do with Justin Fields, utilize the RPO because they love to run. And they also will utilize a little bit of situational play. So that's kind of my outlook on the whole situation.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say I think a lot of people's problem with Kenny Pickett is stylistically they don't see the connection. Because he's a different style of quarterback. He's not really going to run the RPO. He's not really going to do the things that you would expect out of a guy that you want to back up Jalen Hurts. Right. So I think that's where a lot of people have a problem at. But if you look, the guys that we've had since Jalen Hurts has been here, one thing we haven't done the whole time is go and grab a backup that actually has the same play stylistically as Jalen Hurts. I think that's one move that I will always criticize Howie Roseman for. Kenny Pickett's great, but he's not Jalen Hurts. He's not that type of quarterback. So you had guys out there that you could have gotten and brought in that stylistically could be his backup. And we didn't make a move for one of those guys. So I think that's the biggest issue. But if you do have a guy like Kellen Moore who's more adaptable, hopefully, then if Pickett does need to play, he will be able to stylistically change what we're doing to match what he does. So I think that may be, something that maybe the Kellen Moore effect will have that'll be really great. But here's where I think we really nailed it in free agency, Jake. So coming into free agency, we had one inside linebacker that was of any type of starting caliber. We had guys like Brandon Smith and Ben Van Sumeren. We don't know who they are. So we had a huge hole at inside linebacker, right? We had Nakobe Dean and nobody else really that could play inside linebacker. Yep. So we went out in free agency and grabbed Devin White, who's going to be right now the starting right inside linebacker. Nakobe Dean's the starting left inside linebacker. And then we had to go get two backups in Zach Bond and Oren Burks to play behind those guys. So injuries, any breaks, things like that. You now have depth of guys that are proven in this league, and guys that also in Burks and Bond that could possibly say, hey, we don't mind playing some special teams to help out. So there's less spots that you have to dedicate specifically for special teams. So, those were big signings, I feel, as well, because it fixed a problem that we had. And then we signed PJ Mustipher as well. What PJ Mustipher is he's going to be our second nose tackle. So what that does is it moves Jalen Carter to starting defensive tackle. So now we're going to start Milton Williams, Jordan Davis, and Jalen Carter on the 3-4 front. I don't know about anybody else, but I feel a lot better about that than Marlon Tupeludo being one of the starters on the defensive line. So love that move because it allowed us to make other moves because we now have that guy. So a lot of moves have happened, and then we went and got another nickel. So by the way, everybody, C.J. Gardner-Johnson is right now the starting nickel back corner, and his backup we also brought in Tyler Hall from the Las Vegas Raiders. So we went out and said, hey, there's a lot of positions where we don't have the guys we need. We're going to go ahead and get some guys in free agency, and obviously we're going to add some guys through the draft as well.
So I think about this because now out goes the old, in comes the new. So I think the hardest thing is, and in your opinion, as basically watching this, covering this team, so the two hardest ones that I'm sure hard to move on from was Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox. But I think in the defensive side, I don't think I feel as much of like, they're kind of screwed up in the area because Jalen Carter's there. And he's already had familiarity with Fletcher Cox already in the first place. So this was more of like the pass of the torch down. So, but in Jason Kelce's position, because he's been so good at it and he's been a long-time Pro Bowler, he's also been a Super Bowl champion. How big of a hole does that have to be for the Philadelphia Eagles? And is that something that, even though they got in free agency, but is that going to be something that Howie Roseman will outlook going into the draft potentially?
So everybody asked that question. But see, there's a simple answer. His name is Cam Jurgens, handpicked successor by Jason Kelce 2 years ago. So this guy was brought in because they understood that Kelce only had so many years left. I mean, they had to go buy him kegs to get him to come back to past 2 years. So this isn't the first year that we had to wrestle with the possibility of Jason Kelce retiring. My concern, my problem, I would say Achilles heel for the team is how many steps did we see Cam Jurgens get at center last year? And I'm going to answer that for you. The same amount of snaps that me or you got for center at Philadelphia Eagles. Mm-hmm. So what that means is now we're asking in an offseason and a preseason a new center that hikes the ball differently, that doesn't have the reps with Jalen Hurts to build that camaraderie that should have been being built some last year. And that means our I think it was our third round pick last year, Tyler Steen, is going to be moving into the right guard position. He did get some games there because Cam Jurgens did miss a couple of games with injury, and Steen looked well. He jumped on a fumble. He held up well. There was a couple of times when he didn't have his mate on his side, and that, of course, is Lane Johnson, and he looked a little confused. But, I mean, if you're used to Lane Johnson being beside you and then Lane Johnson's not there and his backup's there, then that whole side's going to break down, right? So Steen got some playing time. Jurgens got none. So can they get that, that camaraderie between those two? Because center quarterback is a very important, connection to have. So that's the only question is, can they build that correctly?
Yeah, 100%. And honestly, I mean, the good thing of it is, and as I started talking about it earlier and outlooking the NFC East, is that right now, I am loving with what I'm seeing with, the Washington Commanders for a few reasons, because right now they've got a very good, competent GM who was next to John Lynch in San Francisco, and they did the right thing. They upgraded on defense. They've upgraded a few other offensive pieces outside of tight end. I could see them potentially getting a tight end late in the round, maybe potentially that kid from Michigan that they might get at the tight end, because I think he's a very good pass catching and a very good, run blocking type tight end. But I think it's clear they are looking for their next successor at quarterback. Washington kind of has a game plan. The Giants, Brian Burns goes there, and the defense now looks explosive, but I still don't trust Daniel Jones. I don't think there's enough offensive weaponry there. So I think the Giants are kind of in the middle of the pack. But then I look at the Cowboys, and the Cowboys are just kind of in their own purgatory. After all, after everything we've seen with Dan Quinn taking a lot of his defensive pieces, I think this NFC East, this is one for Philadelphia's for the taking, as I've said, as a mulligan year, right?
Well, yeah, I always tell people this. Right now, we're talking about how great the Commanders look with their pickups, and just to go through some of the good pickups that they've had, right? They picked up a left guard, Allegretti from Kansas City. They got Tyler Biatz from Dallas. They picked up Zach Ertz. Marcus Mariota is right now their starting quarterback. I definitely don't think they will go into the season with him as a starter. But right now, obviously, he is. Austin Eckler, another pickup for them. Him and Brian Robinson. That's going to be a dangerous duo. You look, even at defensive end, Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler Jr., like you said, from Dallas. They got Bobby Wagner, middle linebacker from Seattle. They got Clelin Ferrell from San Francisco. They got Frankie Louvu at linebacker from Carolina. They just went out, and that's not even all the moves, but they went out and they made a lot of moves to make that team better, right? And then, like Philadelphia, they're looking for a tight end. And I'll tell you why I say like Philadelphia. The guys behind Dallas Goedert, they're not it. So Dallas Goedert is great, but Dallas Goedert's a guy that misses a couple of games. Zach Ertz is another guy, knowing well from his days in Philadelphia, a little bit older. So you may not be able to give him the same workload. So these are two teams I think they both will be looking either in free agency or the draft, or possibly both, to grab some young talent at tight end. The Commanders, obviously, they're going to need to do something at quarterback. Until they do that, you can't put them there. But the thing is, it's still early, Jake. A lot of people want to write Dallas off. I think Dallas is doing something that's very scary. They're being calculated. They're making some moves. They're opening up some cap space, and they're going to target specific second-tier guys that are going to come in and make a difference for them instead of going after the big, sexy name or overpaying their own guys. So I think until we get past the draft, until we get out of free agency and we get to like OTAs and things like that, don't count Dallas out for trades or making moves, because they're nowhere near done. They're not going to go into the season with that team the way it looks right now.
Yeah. No, and that is a good point. Dallas could easily, and that's the one funny thing about the Cowboys, is because I never know what to do with them in any given in any given rate at any point, because honestly, they could definitely surprise us. And it's funny we actually mentioned it, because I just got this 27 seconds ago. But apparently, the Commanders, from what it sounds like, and I anticipated this, but it seems to me that they are leaning towards picking Jaden Daniels over Drake May. Now, that's actually pretty interesting. And that means Philadelphia and Washington will both have very elusive running and throwing quarterbacks. But and I've talked about this before with Drake May, unless you have a left tackle that can protect the blind side, Drake May will be successful. Because I've watched film, and he looks stiff as a stone. So that's actually kind of interesting right there. And honestly, I anticipated Washington going after Jaden Daniels. I think this is honestly like the right move for them, especially if they're trying to keep up with a team like Philadelphia.
So Jay, 2 years in a row, the number 2 overall pick is going to get the best quarterback in the draft.
Yep.
I said it last show, say it again. Jaden Daniels is going to be a better professional football player than Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams may not be bad. He may be fine. He may go on to do great things, but Jaden Daniels will be better. Because Jaden Daniels has one flaw in his game, and that's that he likes to not get down when he's running. That's fixable. He has his throwing is fine. His reading of passes is fine. He can make passes at all the levels into tight windows. He does all those things. The only thing that you really need to work with him on is obviously the speed of the game is going to be faster. So some of those windows are going to be smaller, and making sure that he decides to start going down and not try to take on linebackers and defensive tackles and corners and safeties in the NFL, because you will be on the sideline with a clipboard. As long as they fix that, Jaden Daniels is, to me, the best quarterback in the draft right now.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And again, and to me, like, the only skepticism that I had was, of course, Jaden Daniels to the Raiders. And I think part of that reason was the Raiders, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. The Raiders took an LSU quarterback in the past, and I'm like, could this possibly fix, that mistake they made last time? Now, but if it's true that this is basically what they're leaning towards, I think Washington has upgraded a little bit of their offensive line. I think they could use a little bit more of an upgrade, but I think this is perfect. Because they already have an offense outside of tight end. They've got a really good one, and defensively they could get better, but I think it'll be much better because Dan Quinn knows how to work his side of the ball. Now, an interesting thought. So shifting on to basketball, I've said this early in the program, is right now I'm 8 for 8, potentially going to go 10 for 10 on my picks. Out of all these years I've watched college hoops, for 10, 15 years, this is the first time in my lifetime I have ever felt so obvious of my picks, because it's just like, it's right there. Is it fair to kind of say and to kind of criticize this, that college basketball, I think this was not a great year for them, even though it'll still be entertaining, it'll still be great to watch. But I just felt like when I was filling out my bracket, this just felt like more of an obvious fill out than any of the years that I've done this, right?
Well, I mean, I think the first round was, right? Because we know the upsets. We know 11 seed is going to win, right? 11 seed wins every year. That's clear. We know that normally one, or at least normally two, sometimes one, 12 beats a 5. These are things that we automatically know. Yeah. Then as we go through and you fill out your brackets, you kind of just look for the matchups, which, like, I go through and I say, okay, 12-5, where's it at? Which 12s are going to win? I look at the matchups. Okay, this one, right? You're either right or you're wrong. But I think where we'll start to get some things that we don't expect is once we get to the second round. I think round one's pretty flush. It's pretty obvious. It's pretty easy to tell. It's once we get to the second round and you start to get some of those teams that are a little bit better playing each other, and they're right on that edge, kind of like the 8-9 games are. And it's like, okay, you may be a 7 and you may be a 3, just to throw two numbers out there that may not even be the ones that match up. But you guys, stylistically, matchups and things is going to be interesting. I think the first round is where it's a lot more simple to tell, especially in the men's game nowadays. Honestly, you can say that for the women's too. The women's is probably easier to tell who's going to be in the Final Four, to be honest. But with the men's, that first round, it's if you really watch, you really pay attention, you look at brackets, you read bracketology, you follow the teams, you pay attention. You just basically become a sports nerd and forget everything else in life except for whatever else you have to do. And it gets pretty easy.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, right now, I think this might change, because as of right now, there's literally seconds left in Oakland versus Kentucky. And Oakland's winning 78-74. So that might change it. And I'm like, wow, I can't.
Yeah, that's going to hurt me
Kentucky.
Too.
Good Lord. I didn't even think that this was going to be the route that Kentucky was going to end up going. That's just brutal.
I had them losing in the second round because they have one of the top scorers out, but they have their second best scorer back. So I had them losing in the second round, but if they lose in the first round, that could definitely.
Oh yeah,
because
I mean, Kentucky, I had them like in the round of 32, and then by the time they were facing off, like I had them losing. I had them losing right after the round of 32. I didn't even think this was a team making it into the Sweet 16. I mean, and you're talking about Marquette. That, like, I have them as my pick, that if they faced off against them, like, I had them as my pick. Marquette is just that good of a basketball team this year. But, yeah, that's just disappointing of Kentucky. But yeah, I just think that because with the way that college basketball is shaped up, And this is also reflected upon the NBA because, to be honest, and I talked with Kim Becker about this last night, is I'm not questioning Denver at all because Jokic is by far their top stud, and Jamal Murray, who's not got a single All-Star vote, is by far one of the best playoff guards going into it, knowing that I need a shot, I need a pass, and I need a stop. Like, I need one of those. And I think Jamal Murray's been perfect about that, but then also having a few aces in the hole when it came to Michael Porter, and it also came to Aaron Gordon. So I'm like, I think that honestly, the NBA, it's become a little bit of a snooze fest for several reasons, because with college basketball, the NIL and the G League, and then a lot of these outside entities as well that have a lot of their separate leagues, it's like, I'm not going to hear about any of these college stars until year 4, year 5 in their pros. And I'm like, so I'm thinking, what if they established a system like what the NFL has? Because the NFL's so king for this, because college football's great. It's going to be even greater with a 12-team playoff. But I'm like looking at college basketball, and I'm like, these kids are getting drafted from like 17, 18 years old as far as domestic players, and they're not even up to the level of competition like a Jokic or a Doncic or Giannis or even Victor Wembanyama for that matter. So does it kind of feel like the NBA and Adam Silver really need to make a change at this?
They should never let kids come out of high school.
Yep.
There have been a couple examples of kids who were successful, like a Kobe, a couple of years down the road. But you think, and you look back over time, can you really name one guy that as a 18-year-old or 17-year-old out of high school that was great year 1 or year 2, right? You think about guys like Kevin Garnett. They were okay, but they were getting beat up physically because they were not ready. And then all the examples of guys that never did anything in the league or didn't even make it to the league that left after 1 year or not going to college. I think you need to have to go to college for 2 years, right? I think if you're a kid that wants to go straight from high school, if you're not drafted, you should be able to go to college and play. So, for instance, if you want to go to North Carolina, I don't think North Carolina should have to save a slot for you, but if they want to, they can. And you can attempt to enter the draft. If you're not drafted, you should be able to go to college, and you have to stay 2 years.
Yes.
I think that's the fix. And I think, but the other problem with it is these GMs, these team presidents and stuff, you got to start looking at these kids that are 17 and 18 and saying there's very few of them that have what it takes, and don't draft them. Let these kids go to school. Let these kids get a year or 2 of seasoning, and then they can come out and be available to play. Because after 2 years, if you're good enough, you're good enough, right? Honestly, I believe in basketball.
Yeah.
But out of high school, 1 year in college, a lot of these kids are not ready for it. And there's a few that are, but that's not going to hurt them to play an extra year, right? If you're ready at 18, you'll be better at 20.
Yeah, I totally agree.
That also would help the college product.
Mm-hmm.
Because you'd be guaranteed to have a great player that walks onto a college campus for 2 years.
And you got to think, because the NBA and what it's really leaning towards, because just like Major League Baseball and just like hockey, it's ran by international stars. Because now baseball, we do have a bunch of our domestic stars that are still good. Mike Trout, Pete Alonso, Bryce Harper. But we also have mixtures of like your Acuñas, your Otanis, and even, your Guerrero Juniors of the world. But in hockey, it was never even domestic to begin with, even though we still have Austin Matthews. We still have a couple like TJ Oshie, but, Russians and Canadians and, Czech Republicans, like they overrun, the hockey world. But I think, honestly, I've been saying about this too. I think if you build a bridge, like a bridging structure for the NBA and for college basketball, because I would rather see players get drafted at age 22, 23, knowing they at the minimum got 2 to 3 years of college basketball experience. Because one, there's many reasons. One, you're looking for the time they spend on the court. You're also looking for the shooting efficiency from both within the paint and from beyond the arc. And you're also looking for them of how do they handle adversities? How do they handle pressures? Because again, it's a totally different realm when you're in the NBA. And as a college basketball star, like I'm seeing this year, I'm barely getting a lot of wows because I'm not getting enough wows like I did with, Zion and Anthony Davis and like a lot of these guys I watched in college. I'm not getting a whole lot of that. Now, there are still good stars, but they're not ones that could be translatable into the NBA. And I think the NBA has become a different breed at this point. So I think at the same time, and it's like this, you're not going to let a kid go out and just experience life straightly like when they got one more year of high school left. That's not logical because it's like they're not mentally matured when it comes to dealing with finances, dealing with, the stresses of work relations, or when it comes to personal life. They're not ready for that. They're not prepared for that. You're not going to give a kid $5 million at age 16 and think, oh, he's just going to be good. Just going to be good. That's just not realistic. I mean, but there has to be a change in it. And I think, honestly, like I proposed at least a minimum 2-3 years is the same point as well. I think that's about as fair and as proper because then it's helping the college basketball world to build these guys. And I think maybe because the question in the NBA is, who's going to be our face of our domestic stars? Because as of right now, when LeBron James is retired, the only one I'm looking at is Jason Tatum. That's the only one I'm looking at. Because Steph Curry, he's great, but he doesn't quite fit the role of as far as he's the face of this is what the league should be. Not even close.
He's not going to be there much longer than LeBron. Kevin Durant's not going to be there much longer than LeBron, right? Because LeBron's had an elongated career, so a lot of these guys are going to be retiring around the same time.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, the only other one I can think of is Anthony Harris.
Look, a lot of people started thinking Anthony Edwards. And a lot of people keep thinking Anthony Edwards, and I'm like, look, let's put down the pom-poms here after we just saw the dunk and all the rest of it. Like, I think he's a great player. And look, I watched him play. I watched him play live when we were in T-Mobile Arena for Team USA. I thought he was really, really good. Between him and Jaren Jackson, I thought they were a very, very good combo. But I think maybe because if I hold that door open for, Anthony Edwards, my hope is, does he have the physical capability? Does he have the mental capability and capacity? And does he kind of have that it factor? Because once you start bringing MJ into this conversation with Anthony Edwards, I think we're looking way too far ahead at this point.
Yeah, but I think like if you want to have the next face, you want a guy that's not going to be 5, 6, 7, 8 years into his career by the time LeBron leaves, right? So you look at Tatum, and we're already in year 5, and LeBron he's going anywhere. So I think when you have to look at the next phase, you want a guy that's maybe in like year 3, year 4. That's probably going to be Anthony Edwards, right? Just because of timing. Because what's happening is a lot of these guys are not getting what should be their time. Because again, LeBron's been around for a long time. He's been able to extend his career past what a lot of previous players have been able to do. So you've basically taken up guys that should have taken over for you by now, but they can't because you're still here. So I think that's why you're going to have to look at a guy that's in like his 2nd or 3rd year right now, or maybe a guy that's just getting ready to come into the league, because it's got to be someone that's going to have enough of a career away from LeBron for you to say this is his era. All these guys that we're talking about, except for Edwards, they're not going to have enough time left.
Oh yeah, no, and they haven't even begun to build that capacity than what a lot of these other stars have already started doing right now in the league. I mean, we've had such high expectations for some of these players, but it has not translated well with some of them. I mean, look, I loved watching Zion in college, but
I'm not even putting him in the conversation no more.
No, it's not even. It's now become a 4 or 5 year conversation ago that we've had that we thought, he's exactly what the look of the league needs to be. And then, that didn't work. So it's like, I think you kind of have to really build this slow enough for it to where the players can get the much needed expectation and much needed experience. I think at the same time, like what we're going to witness in the draft, We've got 10 quarterbacks in this NFL draft that are going to be the next wave of the future. I think the NBA needs to get on the same page of something like that because this is what you want. I would rather have at least 4 or 5 guaranteeable players. Doesn't matter the positions, whether it's guard, forward, or centers. But at least my 5 that I could very much look back and say, these are my guaranteeable guys that are going to start the wave of the next generation and the next era of basketball. Because they're going to need that. Because unfortunately, if that doesn't happen, I'm afraid we're going to see a lot of views start to plummet.
Well, there is another guy, but I purposely didn't include him because he's had some legal troubles, and that's Ja Morant.
Yep.
Because Ja is exactly what you want. I mean, you put this guy out there, you don't look at anything he's done off the field. So let's take anything that's happened off basketball aside. This man is dominant. When he plays, Memphis goes from a bottom feeder to at least a top 16 just by him being there. So you look at that, you say, this could be that guy, but are they going to push him because of the situation with the, the guns and all that stuff? Are they going to even give him that opportunity to really be that guy? And Adam Silver's league, you never know. But historically speaking, they'll never let him be that guy just because of those things.
Yeah, no, I do think it's going to be interesting. And like I said, I'm watching Adam Silver with a lot of these moves. Hopefully he does the right thing for this league because, again, I would hate to see the NBA literally have its views plummet while hockey and all the rest of them are moving into this direction where, and I doubt it with the fact that like they're not going to plummet very bad, but as far as for domestic views, it's not going to be as attractive because it's just going to be all international all-stars. And that's really what it's going to come down to. But hopefully we can get a new breed of domestic stars because I would love to see it to where it competes, to where this league becomes bigger and better than ever. And much like with what we see right now in the NFL because of their scheduling, from their scouts, and from a lot of their, their prospect portals as well when it comes to when it comes down to it. But appreciate you coming on by and taking the time, man. Where can everybody find you?
Absolutely.
Finding everything on Philadelphia Eagles and so much more.
Well, man, the easiest thing to do is just go to my my Linktree link, and that's https:/linktr.ee /Cool McCain or /Cool McCain. I'll actually put it in the chat here in a second. I'll just have to go copy it. But yeah, that's the easiest way to find me. But YouTube channels, youtube.com/@Eagles Elite Podcast, youtube.com/@Play Caller Sports Talk. Of course, youtube.com/@ Sports Wave Network as well. Of course, I'll be on Friday nights, 9 p.m. So lots of different places, man. I'm around. You can find me.
There you go, guys. Always does such an amazing work at Sports Wave Network as well. And so very, very proud to having him aboard and love exactly all of his contents when it comes to play callers. And then when it comes to Eagles Elite Podcast, absolutely hitting it out of the park. Appreciate you coming on by. Cool. Take care of yourself. And we'll see exactly what the rest of the madness has in store for us. Take care, man.
Absolutely, man.
All right. I got to get out of here. It's definitely long enough that I'm like, we've had so much to talk about, but we at least got into the conversations that needed to be had. I mean, from the draft analysis and so much more. So happy and so glad we at the very least got one of our favorite guests to come up on here. So I'm very, very happy for it. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us here on the Snake Sports Talks. Appreciate all of you guys for hanging out with me here tonight. Like we said before, follow, subscribe, hit the bell button. Keep you up to date on future and past shows. You do not want to end up missing out, guys, because we're only 6 subscribers away from the lucky 600. We can get there. We got it. We just got to smash that like button. We got to smash the sub button, and we got to share it out to all your friends and family. But March Madness, it's fun, it's exciting, and we're still getting a kick out of this one. So appreciate all of you guys for coming on by. Cool McCain for stopping on by. Eagles and college hoops talk and NBA. Appreciate his insights. We've got a lot geared up for us next week, and we've got a lot more interviews that are ready to hit it up out of the park. Jake Silva signing off. Have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next week on the next edition of the Snake Sports Talk Show. See you later, guys, and take care of yourself.